We know why this man is smiling, obviously. He was acquitted in a case where the vast majority of white America, at least, believes he was guilty. The vast majority of African Americans, on the other hand, in what is exacerbating the racial schism, believe that he was framed. I've just asked perhaps the most successful former prosecutor in the history of the Los Angeles DA, is Vince Bugliosi, the man who successfully prosecuted Charles Manson, how he would have prosecuted the case. He has given us several reasons. Now he's dealing specifically with the frame-up. But Vince, let me just alert you. This is what I'd like to do. Talk about frame-up. Talk about the defense contention that the evidence was contaminated. If it wasn't planted, it was contaminated.
Okay.
And then let me warn you, we've got 5 minutes in the segment, and this is our final segment with you. So you have something very provocative to say about Mark Furman. So let's budget our time.
Well, there's no time to on these shows, Geraldo. Of course, I'm wasting time now by telling you that. Yeah, well, but that's why I don't care for TV. Okay, but we're talking about this frame-up thing. She devoted 30 seconds to it, and I hate to denigrate the prosecutors. They're suffering enough as it is, and I didn't tell Steve North, your producer, that I was going to be talking about how I would convict Simpson. That was not a theme that I told him that we were going to talk about. But among other things, you could tell the jury that to believe the conspiracy theory, you'd have to believe that these two teams of LAPD detectives who didn't even work with each other, they were from separate divisions, they hardly knew each other, arrive at the murder scene in the middle of the night, and they decide, apparently there's no dissent, that whoever killed these two people, they didn't care. They were going to let the true killer or killers go. And again, they decided instead to frame someone whom they believed to be innocent, OJ Simpson, and in the process not only jeopardize their career, but risk their lives, because under 128 of the California Penal Code, in a capital case, you plant evidence and testify falsely, you can get the death penalty yourself. They were willing to risk their lives, apparently, to convict this guy. Why? What was in it for them? Apparently they were angry with Simpson because he was born black or he was married to a white woman, and anyone who would believe an incredible fable like that would believe someone who told them that they had seen an alligator doing the polka. Obviously, she should have gone on and told the jury if they were going to frame a black man, why frame O.J. Simpson, of all people on the face of this earth? He'd be the last black man whom they would want to frame. Simpson had been a friend of the LAPD for years. They liked him. They had been pampering him, kissing his derriere. Mark Furman responded to a 9/11 call at Rockingham several years ago. Nicole had been beaten up by Simpson. And Mark Furman, who was supposed to be the main person who framed Simpson for these murders, didn't arrest Simpson. He probably would have arrested a white man, didn't arrest Simpson, didn't even fill out a police report. Is it possible? How is it possible that Marcia Clark would not make an argument like that? On the contamination theory, the contamination theory is predicated on the notion that it was someone else's blood at the murder scene, the true killer. X is the true killer. He's somewhere else, Geraldo. He's in some hotel room or motel room in Topeka or San Antonio watching the trial proceedings. It's his blood. And because of contamination caused by dirt, the elements, bacteria, out of the 5.5 billion people on the face of this globe, X's blood was miraculously transformed into Simpson. Why didn't they make arguments like that? They've had months and months and months of preparation. They should have put in hundreds of hours into preparation. They had 25 prosecutors on this case. And I hate to say that about these prosecutors because they're good people and they were fighting for justice. But this guy committed 2 terrible murders, and he's smiling now, and he's playing golf. If he didn't do it, who in the world did? I'll tell you one thing, Geraldo. It wasn't an aunt of mine. It wasn't an aunt of mine who lives up in Hibbing, Minnesota. I'll tell you that right now. Who else would have had any reason to brutally murder these 2 people, particularly in the savage way that these murders were perpetrated? I'm so angry, Geraldo, that I could eat nails.
All right, before you eat nails, tell us how you would have dealt with the defense in your summation, Vince.
Well, you want me to be truthful, or you want me to lie, Geraldo? If you want me to be truthful, Geraldo, in my summation, in my opening argument, I'd have painted Cochran into so many corners that he literally would have been embarrassed to stand up. Whether you believe that or not, I have no control over it. I'd have painted him into so many corners that he would have been afraid to stand up. And in my final summation, again, I'm being candid now, you asked me the question, he'd have been slinking beneath that console table. I've done it before. No reason why I couldn't do it with Johnny Cochran. Among other things, just to give you an idea, these aren't some of the questions that would have painted him into a corner, questions that he could not answer. But I may have left a Bible and a copy of the Constitution for him on the lectern, telling the jury that he likes to argue the Bible and the Constitution in all of his cases. So when he got up, I would tell him, I just want to help my colleague here if he decided to talk about the Bible and the Constitution again. If he got up and started talking about the Bible and the Constitution, he'd look downright silly and foolish. And of course, if he didn't, because of what I said, he'd be taking a big chunk out of his argument. We have no time to talk about these things on the show, Geraldo. It's just too short a time.
Are you confident that you could have won in a conviction?
Yes, even with this jury, Geraldo. Yeah, even with this jury, I'd have put on much, much more evidence, number one. And number two, I'd have put in hundreds of hours of preparation. The argument would have been so powerful that the jury would have felt it had no choice but to convict.
Is it true that were you approached by any official on the possibility of prosecuting the retrial? Had there been a hung jury?
No, they would not have come to me. They would have used against someone else in the office. But the prosecutors here were not forceful at all. They were laid back and they were casual. The prosecution has the burden of proof, and it's difficult to meet that burden if you're not forceful. Here, not only weren't they forcible, but they went to the other extreme. I mean, Chris Darden unbelievably told this jury no one wants to hurt this man. In effect, he's telling this jury that everyone outside that courtroom, black and white, are hoping for a not guilty verdict. Then he takes it even further, and he tells the jury, on this issue of whether he's guilty or not guilty, I'd hate to be in your shoes. Again, he's telling this jury that this is a tough, close case. In effect, he's telling the jury it's almost a reasonable doubt case. The prosecutor has to do just the absolute opposite. He has to convey to the jury that the evidence is so overwhelming that they shouldn't have any trouble at all coming back with a verdict of guilty. I could talk for hours on this, Geraldo.
Vince, give me a break.
I feel sorry because these are good people. These are good people, and I don't want to denigrate them.
Good people, but perhaps lacking in, at least in this case, the professional wherewithal to carry it off. Okay, I don't want to debate that anymore. I've got 30 seconds left. You have said to us that you believe that in some sense, Mark Fuhrman is a victim. Everybody's hair on the back of their neck stands up when I repeat that. If that is so, that you say that, you've got 30 seconds to defend the premise.
Give me a little more than 30 seconds. Any black who knows me will tell you that I don't have a racist bone in my body. I've always spoken out against the Mark Fuhrmans of the world. I wrote an article a couple years ago severely condemning the DA's office for not prosecuting L.A. police officers, and it's a very small percentage who are engaging in police brutality. The Rodney King case, I guarantee you, you never would have heard the name Rodney King if it had not been for that video. There never would have been a prosecution. For years, blacks have called me bad, meaning good. I don't have a racist bone in my body, okay? However, with that preface, I want to say this. Mark Fuhrman is a victim in this case, and I'll tell you why. He's awakened in the middle of the night. He goes to a crime scene. He does absolutely nothing wrong at all, and his life has been destroyed. So to that limited extent, I'm speaking out in defense of Mark Fuhrman. But believe me, no one has been more vocal about prosecuting the small percentage of police officers in the LAPD who do not represent the LAPD. They have a neo-fascist mentality. They're never prosecuted. They hurt the reputation and stain the blue uniform of the LAPD, which incidentally, along with the LA Sheriff's Office, is one of the finest, least corrupt agencies in the entire country. But these officers have been getting by with everything. They're never prosecuted. Very few people have been up front condemning the DA's office for not prosecuting them. But again, Mark Fuhrman, as bad as he is, and he's a racist, he's an avowed racist, I'm not an apologist for him, but he is one of the victims in this case.
Vince Bugliosi, provocative as always, thank you very much. Let me alert you viewers that tomorrow night,